Hi guys, I hope you're doing absolutely amazing so far. In this video, we'll talk about AnyCancellable. So previously, we took a look at one example and understood what a publisher and subscriber is and what it looks like. Now in this video, we'll talk about AnyCancellable. So let's get started. Here I will create one file. So let's add new playground page and call it AnyCancellable. Let's name this one the previous one, intro to publisher and subscriber. Let's give it number 1, so it will appear on the top and we can maintain the sequence. Now when we talk about AnyCancellable, let's quickly import foundation. Let's skip foundation and import combine as well. Here I'll create a simple publisher first. Just like before, I will keep this array and make it a publisher. Let's name it publisher, and we can use .sync on it, and we can just use this one, call it completion, print, just print completion and value. Just like before, we're just creating a publisher and just using sync to receive values from the publisher. Now when we talk about AnyCancellable, this is something which sync returns. What is AnyCancellable? Let's understand that first. So right here, it's a reference to the subscription. So it's a reference to subscription. We will come to this. What do we mean by AnyCancellable? It's a reference to subscription. Before that, we will understand what we're doing here. So we'll take a step into this and understand step by step what exactly is happening. So I mentioned here. So on the top, I have added this comment, a note, and this note. We'll come to this and understand what AnyCancellable it is when we say it's a reference to the subscription. So let's take a read on what we know so far. So we know we use .sync to receive values, and we are doing that. Every time you use .sync, it creates the subscription. We know that as well. And when it's done receiving values, it cancels the subscription. So this is new. We know that we are creating the subscription here by using .sync. But what is it has to do when we talk about cancel the subscription? Well, when you create the subscription, there is a cancellation also that happens. Let's come to this in a second. Every time you use .sync, it returns AnyCancellable. It's a reference to the subscription we are creating. As long as the reference is there, the subscription is alive. We just took a read on this. We don't understand it very clearly. So let's come back to this one, but right after we go through the steps. So this is the step-by-step description for what is happening in the code. So the very first is publisher gets created. So here we are just creating the publisher. In the second, sync subscribes to the publisher. So yes, we have the publisher here, and we are using .sync here to subscribe to it. In the third, sync returns an AnyCancellable, or say allocated. So AnyCancellable, it's a reference to the subscription we are trying to establish. So what sync actually does is it returns AnyCancellable. We'll understand why it returns to us, why it does not just create and keep it. It returns AnyCancellable, which is a reference to the subscription that we are trying to establish. Right after that, what happens is the subscription is alive now. So as soon as sync returns any cancelable or creates any cancelable reference to the subscription and it's allocated, it's in the memory, it's alive. Right after that, the subscription is alive. Basically, as long as the reference is alive, that is any cancelable, the subscription is also alive. So what happens after that? The subscription is now alive. Publisher start emitting the values and sync keeps receiving the values. So the publisher will keep publishing these values 1, 2, 3, 4, and sync will keep taking those values. And what we are doing with the values is just printing it. So this step is crucial to understand. We know the first two, publisher gets created here. Second is sync subscribes to the publisher. That is also what we are doing. We are writing the code for that. But underneath, what sync does is it returns a reference, that is any cancelable. It's a reference to the subscription. So as long as the reference is alive, the subscription is also alive. So sync returns any cancelable, and only after that the subscription is alive and publisher start emitting the values after that. So as long as subscription is alive, publisher keeps emitting the values, sync keeps taking those values. Right after that, as soon as the publisher emitted all the values, it ends there. That basically means any cancelable, the reference to the subscription is no longer required. The publisher has done publishing all the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and we don't need the subscription anymore. That basically means we don't need the reference to the subscription anymore. So what happens here in the sixth step? Any cancelable is deallocated or released, also something you can say. Subscription is not alive anymore, or say it's cancelled, meaning there is no strong reference to the subscription. Who deallocates the reference, any cancelable? Combine. Combine cleans it up for you. So I've written here combine cleans any cancelable for you. I hope this step is very clear because this is a very crucial part. This clears a very important thing for us, that is when exactly the reference any cancelable, the reference to the subscription is getting created. As soon as we use .sync, we create the publisher, we use sync to subscribe to the publisher. So what happens as soon as we use .sync is sync returns any cancelable, the reference to the subscription. Now the reference is created. That means the subscription is alive. Now the publisher can start publishing the values and it will start emitting those values like 1, 2, 3, 4, and sync keeps receiving it. What do we do with it? Just print it. And as soon as the publisher emitted all the values, that means all the finite values. So here we have fixed number of values. It's a finite publisher. I will mention it here. Finite value publisher. So it's a finite value publisher. So the compiler knows that this is the total number of values the publisher will publish. So, sync returns any cancelable, subscription is alive, publisher starts emitting, sync keeps receiving it. As soon as publisher emitted all the values, we no longer need the subscription. So compiler knows that it's a fixed number of values. So when the publisher is done publishing all the values, the subscription is no longer required. So what compiler would do is it will take this any cancelable reference and deallocate this. So it's deallocates or say release. So subscription is no longer is there. So the reference to the subscription is no longer there, means subscription is not alive anymore. So we can say that subscription is alive as long as we keep the reference alive. So I've written a note here. Subscription is alive as long as AnyCancellable, which is the reference, is alive, or you can say is retained. That means you are keeping it alive. It's in the memory. So for limited value publisher like above, which is here, this is our values and we made it a publisher. Compiler retain it. So when we say about finite value publisher, the compiler will handle this. The compiler will create the AnyCancellable, the reference, and it will retain on its own. It will do all the work because it knows that your publisher is a finite value publisher. It has a fixed number of values. Once the publisher is done emitting all those values, the compiler knows I will deallocate the or release the AnyCancellable reference. And that basically means the subscription will die or cancel. Now that we are clear onto this, let's take a read on this once again. We know we use sync to receive values. Everything you know, every time you use dot sync, it creates a subscription, and when it's done receiving values, it cancels the subscription. Every time you use dot sync, it returns AnyCancellable. It's a reference to the subscription. We are creating it as long as the reference is there, subscription is alive. Or we can say as long as reference is retained, the subscription is alive. We can try running this here. Let's run this. You can see it gives us the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and it says finished also. So the moment any cancellable is deallocated, the subscription has ended. The compiler has cancelled the subscription by deallocating the AnyCancellable reference. When the deallocation happen, right after all the values is emitted by the publisher. So as soon as 1, 2, 3, 4 is published, it will deallocate AnyCancellable. And right after that, it calls this closure completion, and it gives you that it is finished. So finished is called right after sixth step, that is AnyCancellable is deallocated. And that is how we get to know that our subscription was created, was alive for some time, and it is equal, the time is equal to the time the publisher will take to emit all the finite values or all the values in the finite array. And once it is done, it will deallocate the reference, and that is where our subscription, we can say it's cancelled or it's not alive anymore, it died. You can use any term, it's all okay. And that's it. Now there is one question here. Okay, let's come back to this as well. AnyCancellable, it's a reference to the subscription. So in the second step, just to clarify, sync subscribe to the publisher. I've just returned here. It is not really completely established the subscription. We are just saying the sync subscribe to the publisher, but how it actually subscribes, sync returns AnyCancellable, the reference to the subscription. Now as soon as the reference is created, we have the subscription alive, and now the publisher will start emitting the values. So this step is just to speak about what is about to happen, and the third and the fourth step is what actually is doing the task of establishing the subscription. Now the question is, the compiler knows about our publisher that the values inside the array is fixed, it's finite, it's not infinite. So the compiler knows about when the AnyCancellable, the reference to the subscription, it will create, so that after that publisher will keep emitting the values and think keep receiving the values, right? But what if our publisher is not finite value publisher, it's an infinite value publisher, something that never ends? When will compiler will deallocate any cancelable reference? Well, that is the problem. So let's understand this problem with the help of example. And the solution to it is, you know, I've written here sync return any cancelable. So it returns to us, and the compiler asks us to manually retain it. Because your publisher has infinite number of values, the compiler will create the till the third step, it will come, it will create any cancelable, but it will return it to you because compiler doesn't know when to actually deallocate this reference because of infinite number of values. So what we do is we manually retain this reference as long as we want. So let's understand infinite value publisher. So I will write here. So we have timer dot publish, and every 1 second on the main thread I will just give it some value, and I will give it some value like default. This is a timer. Every 1 second it is going to publish date. So the date basically contain the date and the time. So every second it is giving you some value. And now what we would do is we use sync here. So I will say dot sync receive value, and I will just say value and print the value. So before we run it, I will tell you one small thing about infinite publisher like timer. It doesn't start on its own because it's infinite in nature. We have to use dot auto connect to start it. So this will just initiate this. Now we use dot sync. So what is going to happen? Publisher gets created. Yes, we are creating the publisher. Sync subscribes to the publisher. Yes, we have written code for that. And the third thing, sync return and any cancelable. So it will create any cancelable, and right after that our subscription, since the reference is created, reference to the subscription, so the reference is there in the memory, that means the subscription is alive or subscription is in the memory. We have well established the subscription, and after that the publisher start emitting the values and sync keeps receiving the values, right? And as soon as the publisher emitted all the values, now here it's infinite, it doesn't have finite values. So the fifth step, as soon as the publisher emitted all the values, it doesn't come. It is infinite in nature, so this step doesn't come here. But let's understand by running this program first. So we'll talk about the fifth step in some time, but let's see this in action first. So I will clear the window. So it should just run completely, right? I will run this. And you would see this is the value from our previous code. So I will comment it for some time, clear this and run it again. So now we have only this code, and you would see there's nothing happening. Our timer publisher is not working. It didn't started even. So remember the problem I told you, that is the compiler knew when it was finite publisher. So I will uncomment this. So the compiler knew when the publisher will finish emitting all the values. And after that, the compiler will deallocate the any cancelable reference to the subscription. But here compiler has no idea about when exactly it should deallocate any cancelable reference to the subscription. So what sync does is, we know sync by nature is, as soon as you use sync, it will create any cancelable, it will return. So we will take advantage of this because sync will return any cancelable. So we will capture it and we will retain it as long as we want. So how we can retain it is, I will create a cancelable here, which will be of type AnyCancellable. I'm keeping it optional and I will just use it here. And I will put this inside a function example, and I will just call the example here. Now let's take a look at this. Cannot assign to value cancelable is a let constant. Let's make it var, and we will have to put this on main actor. And we are ready now. So let's run it. So all we are doing is our infinite value publisher will keep emitting all the values. That is the fourth step. Subscription is alive, publisher start emitting, and sync keeps receiving the value. But you saw we were using it, but it was not working because the any cancelable returned by sync was not in the memory. Although it got created, but the compiler was not keeping it. It was not retaining that any cancelable reference. It was up to us to whether keep it or not. Now that we have created a variable, and as soon as it is returned, we will keep it here. Now that we are keeping the reference to subscription retained here, our subscription will be alive, and that basically means the publisher will keep emitting and sync will keep receiving the values. Let's run this. Remember, we are retaining the reference any cancelable for infinite time. So it will keep emitting the values. So it gives you the output. So this far it gives you output for the previous code here. And right after that, it keeps giving you the date. This is the timer publishing the value. This is our value. We're just printing it. And you will see it will keep emitting the values. So the any cancelable reference to the subscription is alive right now, and as soon as the timer is done emitting all the values, which is something which will never happen, we will have to actually cancel the reference to the subscription. How to do that? Let's see that. But in other words, what we need to do is we need to deallocate the any cancelable reference which was created, and we are manually retaining it because it's infinite. Compiler doesn't know when to end. So we are retaining it and we will use it to cancel as well. So let's stop this and understand how to cancel. So I will create a method here, a stop timer, and I will say cancelable dot cancel. So what we would do is, okay, this one also we will have to put on the main actor. So as soon as we create our publisher, any cancelable reference is created, we are retaining it. After 5 seconds, okay, we'll say sync after, from now, plus 5. After 5 seconds, we will just say stop timer. Let's clear this and let's run it. And you would see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And after that, it will stop. So what we did here is we actually deallocated the AnyCancellable reference manually. So let's keep a note on this problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this whole thing as a solution. I'm going to comment this. And what was the problem? The problem was we were using the timer and we were using sync. So I will write the steps here. So why timer did not start? What happened? Step by step. Timer publisher creates a timer publisher. All right, we created code for that. Auto connect start the timer immediately. Okay, we wrote the code for that as well. Sync subscribe to the timer. So we have written code for that. But what exactly happens in the subscription process is sync return and any cancelable the reference to the subscription, but it is never stored. It is not retained by the compiler because compiler doesn't know when your publisher will end. So it's not returning, it's returning it to you, and it's up to you whether you want to store it or not. If you don't store it, if you don't retain it, the combine sees that nothing is holding the subscription alive because the any cancelable, you're not storing it, you're not keeping it. That is something we did right after we created a variable of type any cancelable, and we are saying cancelable equals to our timer, which is basically sync returning any cancelable reference to here, and we are keeping it alive. So our combine sees that nothing is holding the subscription alive, so the subscription is immediately cancelled. It doesn't give the chance for the timer to even begin. So you must understand that only when the sync returns any cancelable, only after that the subscription process starts. It doesn't matter if you have started the timer using autoconnect, but this does not even get the chance. It's really as soon as you use .sync, it will, in the process of creating or establishing the subscription, it will actually create first any cancelable the reference. Only after existing of the any cancelable reference, the subscription process will be getting established. So the any cancelable it's getting created, but it is not stored by the compiler. We have to store it actually, and only after that the fourth step will be considered a complete step, and after that only the I would actually write here publisher will start emitting values and sync will keep receiving those values. And in our sixth step, as long as example without cancelable, I would put this into this method. As long as this method, if you call it here, now this is a complete example, although it doesn't matter if you give it a name, put it in a function or not, but just for the sake of notes, as soon as the method ends, there is no strong reference to the subscription. So although you have created the code for it, but it never gets the chance to begin because the subscription is not there in the memory. The reference to the subscription is not there in the memory until you retain it. And that is the solution to it. What we did, okay, the combine sees that nothing is holding on to that reference. You are not holding, you're not retaining that reference to the subscription. The subscription is immediately cancelled. The timer doesn't get a chance to fire at all. Result, nothing prints, and that was the problem. The solution was, I will write here, solution, retain the manually as compiler return it for you to retain manually, or say retain the any cancelable manually as compiler doesn't, because compiler don't know for how long it will have to retain it, since the publisher is infinite. So it doesn't retain, it gives it to you for keeping it. And we actually keep it alive. As soon as we retain it, our subscription is established, the reference to the subscription is there, and our publishing and sync, the receiving of the values, can start. And it will never end. That is the next thing we saw. The publishing, that is this publisher will start emitting the values and sync will keep receiving the values. That will never end. So the problem was, we saw the values was here keep appearing because our publisher was keep emitting those values every 1 second. So what we did is we use our reference to the subscription, that is the cancelable, which we were returning inside here, and we created a variable of type AnyCancellable. We used it to cancel it. That basically means the reference to the subscription is cancelled. It's no longer in the memory. It means there is no subscription. So there is no subscription established. So there is no publisher and subscriber there. Even if it's there, it is just there, but there is no establishment of the subscription is there in between them. And after 5 seconds, we are canceling that AnyCancellable reference, or say that AnyCancellable reference is getting deallocated from the memory. And that is it. That is all there is to understand. I hope you understand it very well, but I am going to write some more further questions that will clarify this even better. So let's stop this, and here I will write the very first question. So the very first question is, when is AnyCancellable is returned by .sync? As soon as you use it. So when you use it, it will create it. If it's infinite value publisher, then compiler doesn't know how to retain it, because it will not retain it, because it doesn't know when exactly it should be deallocated. But in case of finite value publisher, it knows it has the finite values. So at some point in the future, the publisher will actually finish, it will limit all the values. So compiler itself just retain that cancelable. You can see that as well. If you type store, you would see it stores this type erasing cancelable instance, or focus on stores cancelable instance. So sync is returning, but we don't have to actually retain it. Compiler is doing it for us. But when it comes to here, in case of timer, we can retain it manually. We have to retain it manually. So we have created a variable, and here if you type store, that is also one way to retain the AnyCancellable reference returned by sync. Store cancelable instance. But what we do is, we generally in production code, it's a good practice to actually create a variable. Sometimes we create a set of AnyCancellable. Here we have kept AnyCancellable type a variable, but we generally create a set and we use it across multiple files, so that it's because something we just retain for some time. So more into when we will talk about production level code some other time. Let's come back to our question. So as soon as you use .sync, any cancelable will be returned. And more answer to this question, just look at the steps and you'll be fine. Second question is, when do we need manually cancel the subscription? Well, we know finite values, compiler knows when it will end. We also call finite value publisher. So we have two types of publishers, finite value. We also call it short-lived publisher because we know it's going to end at some point. It is going to complete. It has finite values. The publisher will keep emitting the values and it will end at some point. So for finite values, we don't have to manually cancel the subscription. So the question is, when do we need to manually cancel? The answer is in case of infinite values. So I've written here. Here I've just mentioned the two types of publisher we have. The short-lived, which is the finite one, and infinite one, which is long-lived publishers. So this is just a normal term that we use sometime. So just to be aware of it, if we are talking about long-lived publishers, it's basically an infinite publisher. Compiler knows about short-lived or finite value publishers, that it will publish all the values and complete. So subscription happens automatically, or compiler will retain any cancelable reference to the subscription automatically. But in finite, never complete, we retain any cancelable and also can use it to cancel subscription. So we saw in infinite, compiler doesn't know when it will end, so it will give the any cancelable, it will return it to you, and you manually hold on to it, you manually keep it. So we can keep it, we can, as long as it's there, the subscription is alive, the publishing of the values will be there, and syncing the receive value will be received by sync, all will be there. And we can use any cancelable, which the reference which we are returning, we can use it to cancel the subscription whenever we want. So here we saw after 5 seconds we cancelled it in the stop timer here. Next question, why do we use cancelable? Cancelable is a reference to subscription. Without storing the cancelable, the subscription can be immediately cancelled if nothing holds on to it. So it's a problem. We saw our timer did not started if we do not retain the any cancelable reference to the subscription. So this is a common understanding that even if we are not retaining the any cancelable, our code is this much and it should work, right? At least for once it should work. The publisher is publishing, but we have to stick to the fact that is the sync. As soon as you use it, it will create any cancelable reference to the subscription, and only after that the sync where you are using, for which publisher you are using, that publisher will start only after that. And coming back to the next question, when does sync return a cancelable? So this is something we just got clarity onto, and it's very crucial. Just go to the steps and you will see right after 2 steps. The third is how the establishment of the subscription happens. The sync returns any cancelable on only if it is retained, and as long as it is retained, it will keep the subscription alive. And in case of, although one more thing, sync will always return any cancelable regardless of what type of publisher you are using. If it's finite, infinite, it will always return, because that is the very first thing we need to establish the subscription. So coming back, it's the point of who will retain the any cancelable, the reference to the subscription. In case of finite values, compiler would do. In case of infinite values, we have to manually do it. Now coming back to question. So when does sync return cancelable? it returns always. Anytime you call .sync, it immediately return an any cancelable regardless of the type publisher. So cancelable is an any cancelable. Actually, it's the type, as we were using cancelable here in the code. It is of type any cancelable. That is what I mentioned here. As long as cancelable is retained, the subscription is alive. When cancelable is released, the subscription is cancelled or subscription died. You can say that way as well. Why does sync return a cancelable? The sync operator creates and starts subscription. You would see it creates the any cancelable reference first and start a subscription after that. Combine needs to manage that subscription. So it creates any cancelable, the reference to the subscription, and combine needs to manage that. In case of finite value publisher, compiler will manage it, but in case of infinite value publisher, we will have to maintain it. We will have to retain that any cancelable reference. The any cancelable act as token that holds on to the subscription. It's a more of a reference to the subscription. Releasing the any cancelable is the only way to end the subscription early. So you can, not in case of the finite values, compiler would retain or manage the any cancelable reference, but in case of infinite values, at any point in the future, after 5 second, 10 second, 10 20 second, anytime you want to stop the subscription, you can just do it by canceling or releasing the cancelable any cancelable reference. So the last two questions here we have: when does a subscription end automatically? Answer is publisher completes or fails. So we know finite publisher will complete, infinite will not complete. So publisher which is finite may complete or may fail also. Anything happens which stops the publisher. Right after that, in case of finite publisher, the any cancelable will be deallocated. The publisher completes right after emitting values. The subscription is automatically called, combine cleans it up. Whether or not you store any cancelable, it does not matter in this case because the subscription is short-lived. That means finite values. So you don't have to do it. But in case of publisher is infinite, which requires manual cancellation. For long living publisher, we also call it long living publisher. So we have seen the example of timer. Just like that, we have notification center, which we can use to publish notifications. URL session.data last publisher, where we make API calls. And if it's a asynchronous call and we're using a synclet or dispatch or data task group, we are making concurrent calls, then we might have to await on it. If we have to wait on it, then in that case, it's a long lived publisher. We might not get the value ever. So in that case as well, we will have to manually, so it's a long lived publisher. So we'll have to manually cancel reference. So these do not complete on their own. So combine expects you to manually cancel them when you are done. So the conclusion is every time you call sync, you get an any cancelable. You need to retain it if you want the pipeline to stay alive, or you want to keep the subscription alive for long running publishers, especially. For short lived publishers, you don't need to store the cancelable. That's the conclusion. In 3 lines, we can conclude this whole thing. So the key rule of thumb is if publisher completes or fail, if yes, then stored cancelable needed. We don't have to store it because it will auto cancel itself because it can complete on its own. But when we talk about timer notification, it cannot complete on its own. Cannot complete, cannot fail. If it cannot complete, cannot fail, then yes, we will have to, it will, it, otherwise it will immediately die. So because of that, the solution is we have to retain the reference that is AnyCancellable. And that is it. I hope this video gives a clear understanding on AnyCancellable. It's a very, very important to understand AnyCancellable. I hope you find this video informative, and I will connect with you in the next one.